Hello and welcome back to my channel. I actually filmed this intro before, but when I came back to edit it, it was so dark and gloomy that I decided to refilm it. I thought I had better lighting today, but it's all weird again, but we're just gonna go for it. I have already read the first book, and that doesn't make any sense if I don't tell you what this video is. So this is me trying to do the TBR spin again. I have tried to do this the last 2 years, and as with the previous 2 years, I have yet again every intention to finish it this time around. Last year I got to August, and the year before that I got to April, so we'll see. The TBR Spin is a year-long reading game event, whatever you want to call it. It's hosted by Sarah of Freshly Read Books. And the idea is that at the beginning of the year you make a stack of 12 books. Or if you want to jump in later, you get the number of books correlated to the number of months left in the year. And then at the beginning of the month, Sarah will spin a wheel of prompts, and then you will use the prompt of the month to pick the book which you will read of that stack. This year she's doing these spins during a live show. Like I said, I already read the book, so this already happened and it was super fun, and I'm really looking forward to catching up with everyone next month and see how everyone did on their reads. So yeah, I'll run through the books that are on my stack. I'll put the book I read for January at the end, and then we'll talk about that. You can pick your stack of books any way you want. Some people maybe will pick the oldest books on their TBR, or maybe split it into 6 books they are really excited about, and then 6 books they are a little bit more hesitant to pick up. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. You could do anything you like. This year I decided to completely randomize it, so I've put all my books of my physical TBR in a spinner wheel of my own, and I picked 12 books that way. I'm just going to show you them one by one without telling you anything about them, because that would make this video way too long. So yeah, my 12 books are The Rain Heron by Robbie Arnott, How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith, De Afgronden by Pilar Quintana. This is a translated book, I think, from Colombia, if I'm right. Rosarium by Charlotte Weitz, which is a book translated from the Danish. Fire Rush by Jacqueline Crooks. East Goes West by Young-Hae Kang. Prairie Dresses Art Other by Daniel Dutton. The Stone House by Yara Hawari. Thora by Lily Lawless. Local Fires by Joshua Jones. Wat Wij Zagen by Hannah Barefoots, which is, we had to remove this post. And then finally the book that I read in January is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. So yeah, my January pick for the TBR spin was Small Things Like These. And the prompt of this was the book you most want to read from this stack. So basically a free pick. But great for someone like me who has a tendency to save the best for last. And Small Things Like These was the book I most wanted to read at the beginning of January. It's a quiet, introspective kind of book, set in the days leading up to Christmas. It was really cold and grey when I read this, and it was just the perfect way to ease into the new year. Also, the movie adaptation was still showing in the cinema, so I thought I might go and watch that as well. I read Foster in 2023. It was one of my favorites of that year, and I think Small Things Like These is another absolute gem of a book. It's set in 1980s Ireland. It centers around Bill Furlong. He has 5 daughters, and he's a coalman, someone who sells and delivers coal and timber. And since this book is set in the middle of the winter, the days leading up to Christmas, it's the busiest season for him. And whilst he is delivering orders at a local convent, he witnesses some disturbing things. This book speaks of the Ireland Magdalen laundries. These were institutions that were operated by the Catholic Church from the 18th century until as recently as 1996. They were kind of promoted as mother and baby safe houses, sort of a the only place where mothers with unwanted pregnancies were able to go. A place where young unmarried women could work, they could live, they could care for their babies. But they were in fact horrible places where these young women were forced to labor, they were concealed and incarcerated, usually forced to give up their babies for adoption. Now this is not as much the center of the story as I thought it would be. It very much centers our main character Bill. We are very much in his head. He is someone who is hardworking and very much someone who is constantly worrying, constantly overthinking things. He especially worries about his daughters. He worries about whether he's a good enough father, whether he can prepare them for the wider world. Is it a place he wants his daughters to grow up in? He thinks about what is important to him and what his values are and what makes life worth living. And when he learns of what happens at the local convent, he struggles with finding a way to stand up for what's right, what he as an individual can do to make the world a better place, how to be a better person, you know, without making it about himself. He's someone who really observes. He can see other people's struggles and he can see the unfairness of the world, and he really feels that weight of the world on his shoulder. I think Claire Keegan is a master at taking these big ideas and distilling them down to their essence. You know, she can take these complex ideas and then put them in a few sentences that in some way still capture all they need to say. She writes between the lines in a way that she trusts the reader to fill in the gaps. This is something she did in Foster as well, and it's the way this book shines too. Yeah, I really think I've read one of my favorite books of 2025 right at the beginning of the year, and what a way to start 2025. Like I said, I went to see the movie as well, which I thought was really amazing. I think the movie stays quite faithful to the book. I think the acting of Cillian Murphy, who plays the main character, is amazing. I think the way he sort of physically portrays Bill Furlong's struggle and portrays this heaviness that he feels, this weight that he feels, is really well done. So yeah, I would recommend watching the movie as well if you've read the book. So yeah, that was the first spin, and I will see you in about a month's time when I've read the book for February. So let's talk about the February spin. In February, the prompt was to pick a book for a rainy day. So I decided to pick up Rosarium by Charlotte Weitze. This is a book translated from the Danish to the Dutch by Lammy Post Oostbrink, and I couldn't find an English translation yet. I figured this would be a good rainy day book because, one, it's a long book, and I definitely gravitate more towards longer books when it's grey and rainy outside, because I feel like I have lots of time to sit inside and read. And I said during the live sprints that I was glad that this prompt got picked when it was actually raining outside rather than in the heat of summer. The premise of this book is that a brother and sister flee into the woods during an unnamed war. They get abandoned by their parents, and in the blurb it says that the brother hunts wild animals, and the sister slowly turns into a tree, which I find fascinating. It then goes forward in time through a couple of generations, and it just seemed like a fantastic book to get really stuck into. A multi-generational saga, historical fiction, magical realism, eco-thriller, genre-defining kind of book. Unfortunately, I did not get on with this at all, and I DNF'd it. Immediately, I liked the first paragraph. I didn't like the writing. There was some weird sentences that made me think, like, is this the translation that's off? I have actually read other translations by this translator before, and I never had an issue with them. But in this book, the word choices just seemed really unnatural. So yeah, it could be a translation thing. It could be the original text as well. So yeah, that wasn't the best start. I ended up reading about 50 or so pages before deciding to DNF it. The book is written from the third person, and the characters are not given names. They are just called brother, sister, mother, father, and that kept me really distant from the story, and just the writing in general feels really cold and detached. There was also a kind of violent, cruel tone to the book, and I just had a feeling the plot was going in a kind of incesty direction with the brother and the sister and the way they were interacting, and I'm not there for that. I was actually reading this during a reading sprint, and then towards the end of the sprint I was like, I'm getting a bit headachy, and then I realized my face had been like this the entire time. So yeah, I realized that maybe I should stop reading a book that makes me have a headache. So yeah, that's all I have to say on this book, and I will check back in when we are in March. So for March, the prompt was to read a book that was a cover buy, and I immediately knew exactly what book I was going to read. I bought the book in the Tate Modern Museum in London, and I remember going into the gift shop and thinking to myself, you can buy one book, but you have to do it based on the cover design. It has to be a book that you haven't heard of before, and you know, go into the shop like you go into a room with artworks and see what cover catches your eye. You know, much like when you go into a room full of paintings, there's always one painting that will draw your eye. And I ended up picking Thora by Tilly Lawless. She's a queer feminist sex worker / writer from Sydney. It's published by Worms Publishing, which is a small underground indie publisher. So even without knowing what this book was about, it was already ticking a lot of my boxes. You know, like, this is the kind of thing that I want to spend my money on. I ended up giving this 3 stars on the Storygraph, which is not quite covering, because rather than a 3-star book, this was both a 1-star and a 5-star at the same time. 3 stars to me means I liked it, it was fine, I enjoyed it, but this was a book that I both hated and loved at the same time. It was my worst book of the year and my best book of the year. It's the story about a teenage girl, Rhiannon. She lives with her mother on a farm in a very rural area in the mid-north coast of New South Wales. I don't really know the geography of Australia very well, but what I got from the book is that the area is very lush and green, lots of
rivers which are prone to flooding. The environment always seems, it feels kind of slick and humid. But yeah, Rhiannon gets kicked out of her local high school and is moved to a private high school in the nearest, but still an hour on the bus away, the nearest city. And there she meets and gets infatuated with another girl, Verona. Verona is mysterious, she's kind of aloof, there is more to her than first meets the eye. There's a slight folkloric magical realism element to that, and that's all I'll say about that. And then the book is about Rhiannon getting to know Verona. It's about them hanging out and partying with her friends. There's a lot of sex and there's a lot of drugs in this book. It's about her dysfunctional home life and living in isolation. And it felt very much like the TV series Heartbreak High in book form. And then like the 90s version. I know they did like a reboot a couple of years ago, but I haven't seen that, so I'm talking about the 90s version. But like set in the countryside rather than in a big city. It's a book about young people doing stupid young people things. And yeah, I also really love learning some Aussie slang in this book. But also, like in Heartbreak High, the plot is very much lacking in consistency. There's plot lines being introduced and then never mentioned again. The characters are not very well developed. The writing was at moments very cliched, and the dialogue at points felt more like the author wanted to drive a point home rather than actual conversations that people would have. But even though this book has a lot of flaws and is not perfect in any stretch of the imagination, I could not stop reading it. It was such an addictive read. It was queer, it was sex positive, it was messy and non-conforming and sloppy, and I really loved every minute of it. And I'm very glad that this book exists, and I'm very glad that I read it. So yeah, that was my pick for March. Okay, here to talk about the April's choice for TBR Spin. I kept on forgetting I still had to film this clip. I've read the book a couple of weeks ago and I completely forgot I had read it and I had to still film this, which is probably kind of indicative of what I thought of the book. So for April, the prompt was to read the most hyped book. I didn't have any books that were super hyped on my stack, but I had two that in my mind were the most universally known. So I asked the chat during the live show which one they thought was the most hyped, and everyone said this one. This is Wat Wij Zagen by Hannah Barefoots. In English, this is We Had to Remove This Post. Now, interestingly, for the TBR Trail game, hosted by Kim of Expedition Through Pages, one of the prompts our team got this month was to read the lowest rated book, which also turned out to be this book, with a rating of 3.03 on the story graph. So I thought that was interesting to have a book both be the most hyped and the lowest rated, but I'm not sure that bodes well. Yeah, and I think this book definitely suffered from the hype internationally. The premise of this book is that it's about a young woman who works as a content moderator for a big online social media platform, and her job is to just review hundreds and hundreds of violent and offensive posts, pictures, videos each day, and decide whether they need to be removed or not, and about how that can be
an incredibly traumatizing job and how it influences her relationships and the way and she and her colleagues interact with each other. So yeah, that obviously is a fascinating premise, dealing with the dark side of technology and the repercussions on society. So I can imagine why people had very high expectations going into this book. The reason that I personally did not have that high expectations of this book, because this was originally published as a Book Week gift. I've talked about Dutch Book Week on this channel before. It's a week every year, usually in March, for the promotion of Dutch literature. And one of the things of Book Week is that every year a different author gets the honor of writing the Book Week gift, which is a small novella you get as a freebie with any book you purchase during Book Week. So this was the one for, I think, 2021. Yeah, 2021. And I usually go into these books expecting very little. It's very much the kind of book that I save for a day. For example, when I know I'm going to be on the train for an hour or two, I take the book and read it and usually leave it for the next person to find. It's a quick, entertaining read for as long as it lasts. I have read plenty of these books. I could not tell you what any of them were about, because they're just not the kind of book that really stick. And yeah, because I left the review of this book too long, I'm not sure what to tell you. I thought the writing was engaging. I liked how she developed the protagonist, so that you are, rooting for her in the beginning, but start liking her less and less throughout the book. I thought that was very well done. But I think the story just needed more space to develop, and I'm not sure this short form was the right choice for the story that she wanted to tell. Especially the ending felt very abrupt and unsatisfying. And I really thought, considering the topic, this book would have sticked more, but it didn't. So yeah, that's that. It was fine. I'm going to make this book the last book for this video and wrap it up here. Turns out I read 3 very short books from the stack so far, and I DNF'd the longest book that was on my stack. I already unhauled that one, and here is the remaining 8 books I've left for the rest of the year. I'm having a lot of fun with the TBR Spin this year. I have a feeling that this year might be the first year I actually complete the whole stack. Sarah doing the live shows for the spin each month definitely helps. She usually does them about a week before the next month starts, and during the live show she does the spin usually within the first half hour, and then does a couple of reading spins after that. And they are just a lot of fun. It's nice to hear from other people in the chat, see what they are reading, and yeah, I've been really looking forward to the live shows each month. And I think the great thing about the TBR Spin is that you can join anytime in the year. You just need to have a stack of books corresponding with the number of months left in the year. So if you see this video when I put it out, then you can join in for the May spin, and then you will need a stack of 8 books. I will of course link Sarah's channel down below, so you can check that out and you can see when the next live show will be. And yeah, I highly recommend joining in, because it is a lot of fun and a great way to read some books of your own shelves. Okay, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video and for the next TBR Spin video in about 4 months. Okay, bye bye.